Okay, my next project is to I've been changing these stair rail brackets to be black or oil rub bronze to match the other hardware. Like the lock over there is black, everything else is black. So to match this hardware uh, and this doorknobs. Also, this previous owner didn't really paint the house well, so you can see how bad this previous stereo bracket looks. It's got all paint on it, looks really ugly. So I'm removing these old ones and installing black ones like this, and then I will be covering these with painter's tape or something before I paint it. Just do the painting for the place again. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is so there are about many of these stereo brackets, all of which I'm changing. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is functionally these serve to give support, so they're rated for a certain weight, and it all depends on using when I'm removing the screws, and more particularly when I'm adding the new brackets, the screws that go into these actual rails, they tend to be really hard uh, to screw in again, even though the new brackets fit exactly with the old brackets. This is the old bracket removed. What happens is that the screws are very hard to screw in, and I also don't want to use a power tool because that can strip the screws. So I use a series of hand screwdrivers. Now the important thing here is you want to have the right screwdriver tip for the screw, and basically I have a bunch of screwdrivers here, but and they're all Phillips screwdrivers, but the key thing is they're these star tip screwdrivers, but if they don't catch on to the screw head correctly, then you can land up stripping the screwdriver, or and then they won't even go in as much as you want them to as the tension rises. So this is that, for example, I was previously using this screwdriver, and you notice how this tip is now. Instead of just using a standard Phillips screwdriver head, I realized that if I use a specific tip suited for the screw, then it probably catches on better. And so here, for example, I see a choice of 3 different or maybe even 4 different star Phillips heads, but I found this one to work the best, and I'll show you how I determined that for the particular screw that I was driving in. And there's another one here which also might work, but so here there are also choice of many different star heads. These are different types of heads, I think, but these are the star heads. The way you will know is you'll see these 4 spoke like things come out and creates like a star formation, but the depth of these spokes is all very different, and they catch on to screws very differently. So I'll show how I was able to determine the right head to use instead of this one. And what lands up happening is if you use a wrong screwdriver head, then it lands up stripping the screws, and you can see these are what the previous owner used, and you see how these screw heads are very stripped. And then it was hard to remove the screws because you have to have a screwdriver that catches on to these stripped screws. And there are ways to remove the screws using a screw extractor and things like that, but that gets more complicated. But it's always better to use the right screw head Phillips for the right screw. Now this is an example of another screwdriver, but this, notice how narrow and narrow the screw head is. Also, it won't have enough strength perhaps to, the screwdriver might break if I try to move this. But if I use a screwdriver like this, it's got a very thick and solid handle, so it can withstand a lot of rotational strength. Plus you can put whatever screw head you want into this, and that there is a kind of a reversal thing. If you want to tighten or remove a screw, you just have to switch this in the opposite direction and it'll give you the tension that you need. So I found this to be a very good type of screwdriver with a good handle, and it's solid and you can use any screw head you want. And these type of tips you can also use with a power tool, but I don't use a power tool because I need a hand. I like to hand tighten and I like to feel back how much tension there is, which I don't get with a power tool. With a power tool you're more likely to strip the screws. And also to install these, the other thing I noticed is these 3 screws, actually the new hardware came with these 3 anchors, and in my previous bracket I used the anchors, but what I noticed is I was finding it very hard to make the screws go for the anchor to go back in. And what I realized is there was already some kind of a fastener behind this drywall. Maybe it seemed like a metal fastener, because when I was removing the screws, I could hear the squeaky sound of the screw coming out as if it was rubbing against some kind of metal behind this drywall. So then later on I realized that I don't really have to use anchors. I can just use the same screw or holes, and that fastener, whatever it is behind this drywall, it seemed to hold the new screws just as well. So I landed up not using these 3 anchors for the new rail that I just installed. Whereas for this one, what ended up happening was, because I was trying to bang those anchors in, they weren't going in. I needed to make the hole bigger with a drill bit, and it got kind of messy and complicated, and I didn't need to do all that. So because I could just use the existing fasteners. I didn't know there were existing fasteners. I thought maybe this is a hollow wall, and maybe it is, but there were already some existing fasteners, at least for this one, so I just landed up using those. Okay, so I'm going to be replacing one of these stair rail brackets from this bright brass to this oil rub bronze or black to match the hardware. So I'm all ready with the tools that I need. So first things first, I remove the old bracket. Now the thing is, I already mentioned that you have to use the right screw head to get enough tension to be able to put the new screws back in, because especially getting back into wood is really hard. Now this one, the screws seem a little, not loose, but not completely flush. But anyway, I have to remove these, so I'm going to use just any Phillips head. Now the hardest part is these ones here, and so you'll see how these are already stripped because the old owner didn't use the right screw heads, and you see how badly they're stripped. So I've been having a hard time removing these, but luckily this one does seem to hold. It's a little bit of a bigger, wider Phillips head, so it seems to fit into the stripped screws fairly okay, but it needs a lot of pressure and strength to remove these. So I'll show. It might be hard to take the video while I'm removing it, but I'll try. So this one doesn't seem to hold too well, but this one seems to hold a little better. So I'm gonna try removing this first. You can see it takes a lot of strength and to remove this. You can see it gradually coming out. I need a lot of grip, so I'm using a shorter, like a stubby kind of a screwdriver, and it is coming out, but it is really hard to remove this. And then I'm gonna try to remove this one, but I can already feel that the screwdriver is not holding too well, so I might need a different kind of a screw head to remove this one. I can see it partly hold but not hold too well, so I'm going to try a different screw head to remove this. Maybe I'm going to try this one first. I'm going to just assess and see which one seems to hold. I know this also doesn't hold too well. You can see when I put it in, it's very easy for me to rotate it. So how about this one? This one also doesn't hold too well, so I'll have to find a screw head that holds better on this. And I can use one of these existing pack of different screw heads that I have. Screw drill bits, or screw heads is I think what they're called. Not sure what they're called. Driver bits, yeah. So I'll try one of these to see what fits this one better. But this one does seem to be coming out, so I'll go ahead and remove this one completely. I can feel there's some kind of yeah, so this is out. Now the new one that I'll be adding in, this is the new bracket and the new screws, and this is the bracket that I'm trying to remove. But the new screws are slightly little longer than this one. That's okay, it'll hold better. And you can see the screw heads. This is the new one, is also Phillips screw head. But the way to test which screwdriver bit I'm going to use for this installing this new one is it's definitely not going to be this one, because if you notice, if I put the screw all the way in, you notice how this flange, or the part that's the fluted part, it's all the way in to the depth of the screw, but it doesn't hold really well, and there's an exposed part of this groove kind of thing. So I know this is not the best fit for this screw. The screwdriver head is not the best fit, and since this screwdriver has a fixed head, I'm not going to use this. I'm going to use this so screwdriver that where you can change the bit, driver bit. So I'm going to remove this existing driver bit from here, and then I'm going to put this aside, and then now I'm going to test to see which might be the best bit or driver bit for this screw. So if I start, obviously this does not even go into the screw, so that's not a good match. Then I have a choice of this one. This one goes in very little, so you see how this groove is still exposed in the driver bit, so this is not a good fit. This one also goes in and it's a much better fit, but you see how the screw still wiggles a bit, so it's not the best fit. And finally this one, I put it in, it seems to go in really well, and see how the screw does not even wiggle much. and there's not much of a flange or this groove thing exposed. So this seems to be the best fit. And then here also have similar star bits, so Phillips head bits, but again this one barely goes in, and it exposes a lot of the, you can see it exposes a lot of the this groove like thing. How about this one? It goes in and it's a little better than this, but still exposes some of the groove. This one is also a lot better, but again you can see it exposes some of this groove. So, and then how about this one? Also goes in but also exposes a lot of the groove, so it won't give out as much rotational tension. So the groove, this sloped part should be not very narrow. It should go all the way into the screw, and this is probably also good, but again you notice how the screw doesn't hold, it keeps shaking. So the best fit is this one on the corner, and you see how it holds the screw really well. So I'm going to use this bit in this screwdriver. So pull it out, yank it out. And then that's what it looks like. And this is not very, doesn't go very deep. You see how it goes only to a limited amount. It has the right angle. So I'm gonna use this one, push it in, and it holds it really well. And then basically the way I would use it is I would put it into the screw, and you see how it holds pretty well. This might even be magnetic, but it doesn't have to be. But you notice it has a very good grip on the screw. So I'm going to use this one going ahead. There we go. Now for this particular section, I noticed that there's this I don't know if it's a crack, or it may be a crack that it's broken, or maybe it was installed in two separate pieces, but it looks like this crack meets here on this particular handrail bracket. So it looks like one screw is on this side, the other is on that side. So this is a little different, but it should be the same way to uninstall and reinstall the new brackets. I'm going to go with whatever plan I had earlier. So just remove these pieces and notice how this part of this handrail is separate from this part, but it should not matter in terms of how to install the new. This one is coming out easy, unlike the other one. For the other one, I'm probably going to need a screw extractor because the screw is stripped so badly, the head. So this one is coming out easy. So this came out really easy, and then this one seems stripped pretty bad. Seems really badly stripped, so I might have to, the screwdriver is not holding onto this head. So I'm going to take a look to see, better look to see what kind of a head. I might use a different type of a head from one of the drill heads that I've got, and this one has come out. And these screws generally tend to come out very easily, so there's usually never a problem. I'm gonna just remove these. As a matter of fact, I can use a longer screwdriver just so that I have better access to remove those screws, which do tend to come out much easier. I can remove the rest with my hand. And the final screw over here. Now this bracket may not actually come out because this screw is still holding on to the side of the rail, but because this rail is in two pieces, I might be able to yank it out by raising this other piece, which has seemed to be separate or freed from its own side of the bracket. So these are the 2-3 screws that came out, and maybe I might be able to yank this out, or maybe not. Don't want to damage the other 2 rails, so I have to figure out how to using a screw extractor. I'll have to figure out how to remove that screw, and then I can remove this entire bracket and replace it. Now for this last bracket on the top of the stairs, I used this even though these screws were stripped, I was able to remove it using the right type of screwdriver head, and they seem to be coming out even though the screws are stripped. So this should be easy to, it all depends on how badly the screw is stripped, whether or not it's easy to remove them. So in this case, they were not too badly stripped, so I was able to remove it, all 5 screws, 3 that go on the wall and 2 that go on the bracket to the handrail. And so this should come out. It did come out, and that's what it looks like. That's the old bracket, and I managed to get all this hardware out, and now it's just a matter of installing the new bracket. I'm definitely going to use the right type of driver bit when installing it. Okay, so now I'm ready to install the new bracket. So one of the things I want to check is whether these drywall screws, if they're gonna hold. So I'm just gonna they seem to hold something. There seems to be some kind of a fastener behind. So what that tells me is, so you can hear this metal squeaking sound. So what that tells me is that I may not need these anchors because there's something to hold the screws behind it. This could be some kind of a metal fastener behind the drywall. And I want to use the right kind of screws. So I'm going to use the flathead ones for the wall. These are the flathead ones. And for the actual rail, I'm going to use these bump head. I don't know what these are called, pan heads. So I'm going to keep these two aside. I'm going to use these three flathead ones for the actual bracket. And so just a matter of putting it up here like this. You see how well it fits in the holes of the previous bracket. I found an exact match of these on Amazon. So to match, I put them side by side. They match exactly. So I think you paid something like maybe $16 or $17 for a pack of 6 of these. So now it's just a matter of taking this. This might be hard to do while holding the camera. I'm gonna try, but basically got to hold it in place like this, and put the screws in just enough to hold it. Oh, this is going to be hard to do. Actually, maybe not. I'm going to hold it like this and then screw it in place. It's going to be hard to do while holding the camera. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this and film after I've installed this. Okay, so I'm going to put in one of the screws and then I'm going to put in the others. And the screw seems to be holding into some kind of a fastener behind. So it seems like it'll all work. It'll all work out just fine. This is the final screw. You seem to be having a lot of tension, and so the whatever fastener is behind is probably perfect. tighten all the screws. Okay, now one thing to keep in mind is this has to be in the right, this either drive or reverse, clockwise or anti-clockwise. So set it to drive, where I get the ratcheting and the tension is correct for driving. Now this screw seems a little loose, it keeps going round and round, but this one is tight, and this one I'm gonna tighten now. Yeah, this is tightening really well. Yeah, this is really nice and tight. Yeah, this is nice and tight. And now it's just a matter of putting in this bracket. Now this bracket tends to be much tighter. The screws tend to be much tighter, but it should still work out. I'll put in the screws of these now. Okay, so I'm going to put in these final brackets. And these go in not at an angle. They have to go in parallel, but at the same time they both have to go in. So I would suggest tightening each one in turn, and if one needs to be at an angle, then so be it. But basically this entire bracket has to, see how it's not going in? Now it's going in. It has to sit flush. So that's how it should be. So you need to make sure that both ends are flush, and for that one, it may be required one is at an angle, not sure, but we'll see. Maybe I'll remove this and put it back and see if it goes in straight. Okay, so tightening this final bracket. This is really tight, but because I have the right screw head, it makes it much easier. And I'm not stripping the screw. There we go. This one is fully flush. And this one I'm going to make fully flush. There we go. That's fully flush also. And this is good. This bracket is completely installed and good to go. And that's the entire stairwell. And that's what this one looks like. I still have to find a solution to remove those screws using some kind of a screw extractor, but I replaced a few more of these brackets and I'll finish up the rest maybe over this weekend.